A scene for shivering fools. A dyad in the force.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of DYAD in the Force. I am not centered. Here we go. Let's fix that. Episode 225. We're getting up there, folks. And I think, as we were reminded by Darth Angel in the TikTok chat, we do have a Hot Ones challenge because we met our likes threshold a couple of episodes ago. That'll be a milestone episode, maybe 250. I think 250, right? That seems like a... That gives us enough time to to train our capsaicin muscles. How's it going, Choco?
I mean, I'm already in it, so you know, it's been an interesting day. That's for sure. Spent most of the day in the emergency room, so that's always fun. But things are okay. Basically, where my wife works at an oncology doctor's office. It's like attached, like there's a hospital, and then across the street there's like clinics.
Dorms?
I mean, when people say dorms, I only think of college dorms, but like no, there's, you know, that's where like extended, that's where all the specialists and stuff are.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And a pharmacy, and so she works for the oncology there. And so anyways, apparently what happened is something inside of their air conditioner caught on fire.
Ooh.
And so it just started pumping.
Become a member of the DYAD squadron.
I think I lost Choco. Are you back?
I think so. I mean, I can see me. That was just a terrible time to stop.
Yeah. I think you were about to sneeze in the freeze frame. So they caught
fire. All right,
fire.
what was the last thing I said? Yes. All right, so something inside the AC unit caught on fire, which means that there was like a burning freon and stuff being pumped into the office.
That's toxic.
And so everyone got super sick. She got dizzy and like was trying to make it home. So she went out to her car, but was like messed up and dizzy. And so she called me, and I was going to go pick her up. And this is right in the morning. But before I get to her, like I jump out of bed, I'm, you know, half naked, and I run to my car so I can go pick her up. While I'm driving there, I get a phone call, and it is a doctor, and they're like, you know, we have, you know, your wife is, you know, we are going to admit her to the emergency room. And I was like, oh, right, because she works there. It's a work-related thing, so they you know, she needed to get checked out and stuff. So they went to send her to the ER. So I promptly turned around to get dressed because I don't want to go into the ER half naked. But and I knew it was going to take a while now that I found out that she was going to be admitted. And because she had to be admitted to the emergency room, they had to take her via ambulance. So I think she might hold a Guinness World Record for the world's shortest ambulance ride. It's literally
across the street.
Yeah, she was in the parking structure across the street from the ER. But yeah, and then of course when that happens,
that'll be $10,000.
It just takes all day. You know what I mean? Like you wait, you get admitted, and they do all the blood work and then all the stuff. So she's resting right now. It's
well, that sounds like an adventure, to say the least. Well, I hope she's doing okay, and I hope everyone else that was subjected to burning freon is okay, because that's highly toxic.
Yeah, so like there was two of her other coworkers that were in the ER as well, and they because I mean they had a fire department out there and all this stuff, and then the doctors, or sorry, the people in the building were like, hey, the smell is gone. Can you guys come back to work? And I'm like,
Excuse me?
my brother in Christ, no. First of all, it's not just the smell. It's the chemical. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, you're a medical professional. You should know that it's not just the smell.
It's like the mushroom cloud dissipates, and you're like, "Can we go back into the city now?"
Yeah, and you're like, no,
And then you
the
go
fire's
back in,
gone, and then
go back in. You start burning up your lungs. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Just catching up with Choco, hoping everybody is okay who's affected, especially Bree. Mr. Man said, who do you think would win, Count Dooku or Mace Windu? We'll address that when we get to our main segment, Mr. Man. I apologize for delaying the answer, but we can give you a quick one. Mace would win that one. But if Choco disagrees or agrees, we'll...
No, I'm in the same camp. Although I would love to see Dooku in his prime. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
We've only seen him at age like 80 or 90.
Yeah. We'll go deeper into the discussion as to how Mace wins that. But that's your short answer. Shout out to everybody on the YouTube and Twitch side. Obi-Wan Kenobi says hello there, chat. And I think Master James Kenobi was here earlier saying I have to work, but stopping by to say hello. Can't tell in card.
James.
Shout out to Spooky Kitty. Hi, fellers. Craig McGuinn says, Element, are you sure that Hot Ones challenge should be episode 250 when 260 will mark this channel's 5-year anniversary? Well, that's good to know. I stopped counting. But yeah, I guess 260 is 5 years. We'll do a Hot Ones challenge, and we'll have some games to play with everyone for our 5-year anniversary. Still kind of thinking about what we want to do. I can't believe it's 5 years. Shit.
Wow. Dang.
Spooky says it do be hot as balls as balls. as balls out there. Okay. Lord Goob, Jesus, what is wrong with people? You're asking what is it? You're asking the choir?
and on one hand, I do kind of understand, but because like specifically she's working with cancer patients, you know what I mean? It's not like sometimes it sucks for that person of like, I have to reschedule my treatment, otherwise we all die. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's just one of those things.
The question is, who wins the coolness battle, Mace or Dooku? It depends on if Mace... Listen, in Glass
Mace.
Abyss...
Come on.
In Glass Abyss, I believe Mace wears like an assassin's robe. And I want to see that.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, the coolness vibe alone from him walking out on Dooku and being like, this party's over. Like, come on, man.
We'll see. We'll put the capes up against each other with Mace's Glass Abyss robe and Count Dooku's.
Now, Count Dooku's silk pajamas are elite, though. Elite.
Michael Sorbo asks, nitpicking question in Star Wars, but why didn't the New Republic just send a spy to infiltrate the First Order? We'll also address that in this episode, in the main segment, because this episode is Star Wars fans have lost the plot. We're going to be addressing a lot of things that people have either come to know or come to espouse about Star Wars that are just more than just opinions. Like, we don't care if you don't like certain projects, but like if your reading on things is like outlandishly wrong, something is wrong. You know, and this is obviously spurred on by the most recent video I had to stitch, which claimed that it was Luke's attachment to his father that saved Anakin, which couldn't be further from the truth. It was love, and a lot of people conflate the two, right? They think loving someone is the attachment, but we keep on saying that it's the inability to let go which is the attachment. Anakin Anakin cites this in Attack of the Clones, compassion, which I would define as unconditional love. And what is unconditional love? That is no strings attached. So, of course, Anakin has attachments to Padme. You know, he can't lose her. Otherwise, he goes off.
I need her.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was possession. It was selfish, and yeah, it absolutely was not his attachment. His attachment that we see in that scene in Return of the Jedi is specifically when Vader's like, "Oh, well, if you won't turn, maybe your sister will." Right? That's a threat to his sister, and he at this point, Luke lost the plot and was going to turn into everything that he didn't want to be to save his sister, and that's the inability to let go thing.
Yeah, there was also another attachment where Anakin, ironically, gets the lesson as he's dying. Leave me. You were right.
Yeah.
And then he said, I won't leave you. That's an attachment. But Anakin says, you already have. It's like, I've got to save you. You already have. Now leave. I'm at peace. Go save yourself. And it's ironic that people think that Anakin was saved by attachment. It's because a lot of people want attachment to be a good thing. It is not. You point to Kanan and Hera, they love each other. But Kanan's ability to detach himself from their relationship to do, his Jedi duty and to sacrifice himself, that is what makes it great. Not because they're attached. It's because they don't have attachment. They love each other regardless. That's unconditional. No strings attached.
What's weird about that whole conversation though is like we see so many movies and stuff where the heck we see so many movies and things where like someone bribes the prime minister, they kidnap the prime minister's daughter, and so he gives them the nuclear codes. They're like, that's an attachment. I'm sorry, I know you love your daughter, but like they're stealing a nuclear bomb. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you gotta
Yep. I mean, it's the eternal trolley problem, just like Avar and Elzar, like they love each other, they're in a relationship, and they were like, and they've said to each other, but our Jedi duty always comes first. And Avar's like, yes, it does. Sorry, that's a horrible impression. Chase, shout out to Chase in the chat. Shout out to Akani Oye and Miguel Marenien Larena. I hope I didn't butcher that. Mamdani will win any election saber fighting debates. Congratulations to Azora and Mamdani, I believe his name is.
Oh, and New York?
In New York, yeah.
Yeah.
Jay says 5 years means you have to kiss on camera. Nope.
Only in private.
I mean, I'm willing to do this, like, but I mean, it's on camera, but ain't no way. Let's see. Oh,
No Strings Attached is a great NSYNC album. That's true. That's true. Although I will say the self-titled is the one with Tearing Up My Heart, and I feel like that's the all-time banger. But No Strings Attached gave us No Strings Attached. It gave us Bye Bye Bye. It gave us It's Gonna Be May.
Yeah.
I mean, they got some bangers on there.
Was Sailing on No Strings Attached?
I don't recall.
That is, well, I mean, I'm biased towards that song because I don't want to call him a one-hit wonder, but that's one of Christopher Cross's greatest songs. Sailing takes me away to where I always heard it could be. Okay.
I don't know what that is.
Look it up. Christopher Cross, Sailing. Like, he was the original person that sang that song, and turned it into a harmony. Quartet. Are they a quartet? No, they're five, right? or 6.
There were 4. No, 5. I forgot. There's always
Justin,
the random old guy that's like weird.
Justin,
every group had a weird guy.
Lance, Chris, and Fat One, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Joey Fat.
Joey.
That's a joke. I'm not making fun of him. His name is Fatone, and people used to tease him in school.
Not only that, but he actually like opened up like a hot dog cart that's called Fat Ones. Like seriously, you know.
You didn't butcher it. Thank you. Well, I'm glad. Raise your hand if you miss Kanan every day. Not every day.
Jay says digital get down. Okay, you're about the deep cuts. All right.
Get down.
Okay. Fun fact that I feel like I've revealed here 1,000 times, but the first CDs I ever bought was 2 CDs, Big Willie Style and self-titled NSYNC.
I suppose this is a dyad moment because it's like opposite. It wasn't. It was Millennium by Backstreet Boys. Let's see here. Oh, as part of our mixer, I gotta update everybody. I am on 160 of One Piece, in the middle of Skype.
Dang. Okay.
I really love One Piece now. Like, I was so stuck on episode 60 for the longest time. Like, I couldn't follow their, like, island romping. But, like, as soon as we entered in the big arc era of One Piece with Alabasta and that kingdom and Vivi's story, and then now we're in Skypiea, I'm so invested in their adventure. It's gotten so much easier to keep track of things because of that like overarching plot, you know. Nico Robin has my heart.
Nico Robin is like a for sure top 5 fictional female for me, maybe higher than that, but I love Nico Robin. And I'm trying to think that I see. It's hard because you asked, who do you think my favorite character is? It's so hard on a show that's so long because there's entire arcs of storylines and characters you've never even met yet. You know what I mean? Like, you know.
So what are the chances that my favorite changes based on what you know? Do you think there is someone better than Nico Robin that might catch my attention?
Well, honestly, I should have guessed Nico Robin because that's my favorite character. The I Want to Live scene like made me cry a little bit. You passed that, right?
She says that's a crocodile, doesn't she?
Okay, yeah. So it's yeah, she's just fantastic, but she grosses me out sometimes because her power every now and then she'll make like big gross fleshy wings like Sasuke had his gross frog leg wings, and I hate them. Every now and then she'll make giant feet and step on people. I like that.
I don't know if I can hate that, just picturing all of her hands doing things.
I'm a spooky kid says it's embarrassing, but my first album was Tommy Lee's solo album, Tommyland. That's Tommy Lee. That's wild. That's wild. As in formerly married to Pamela Anderson.
Well, I was I mean, I guess that's his claim to fame for some, but I do believe he was he wasn't Sex Pistols, was he?
No, he was a drummer for it's on the tip of my tongue. Motley Crue. Yes, thank you.
But didn't he? Who is Tommy Lee in the Dreamers the different thing?
I don't know the Dreamers. I'm sorry.
Oh well.
Let's see here. Chase says, I had Big Willie Style and it's such a peak record, but my first CD was Backstreet Boys. My first tape was the Dr. Dolittle soundtrack with Aaliyah. Interesting. It wasn't my first cassette, but the first one I remember listening to a lot was the soundtrack to
Thanks for all the likes, guys.
Can't Hardly Wait. But yeah, you're right. Big Willie Style is a banger album. We had, Getting Jiggy with It, Miami. We got
my first tape. That's gonna be aging me. My first tape was, I believe, Master of Puppets, Metallica.
Okay.
Either that or Use Your Illusion, Guns N' Roses. And then after that it became Nevermind by Nirvana. Luckily I was like on the cusp of CDs, so I only had like 6 tapes in total.
Yeah. I mean, I was obviously we're pretty close in age. You know what though? I will say the tape technology still baffles my mind. Like everything else makes way more sense than like it's a magnetic tape and then it spins and then sound happens. Like I've never understood how tapes work. I've never looked into it, but at least everything else makes sense to me. Yeah.
I think if we compare it to like vinyl, there are some things that are just like magic, little grooves in a record, and then like magnetic data on a tape that's read by another magnetic reader. It's weird.
It's wild. Opinions on Ironheart.
The first episode. The first episode was kind of sloppy for me but I do know that the first episode is usually.
Don't use that word. I have a.
No, I mean like I know the first episode is usually the pilot one, right? And then the rest of the show comes after the fact. But I had some issues with the VFX and the CG in the first episode. The blood siblings choreography was left a little bit left me wanting, but
yeah, the choreography wasn't bad, but it did the Born Identity fast cuts thing where you're like, what's happening, where are we, and I think that's
I'm also getting
listen, action lives in the wide shots. All right,
I'm also getting tired of those prolonged hero shots at the end of like a cool move to show the actors there. Like, no, we know there's stunt doubles. You don't need to see them like doing the end land or the end like move.
No, I know
on them,
and that's like for me where that crescendoed was actually in Ahsoka when she does the slash pose. And then after that, I've just noticed it a lot more in everything else. Like, all right.
The only time it doesn't affect me is like John Wick, when we know that like Keanu's doing everything because he trained his ass off to do it, But like it's so funny when like we all know what stunt doubles are, and like everyone has an action double, and so like when you see someone do like a series of like somersaults and then a flip and then like you see the last shot of the actor going and then like it lingers on their face. You're like, no, we know you didn't do that, but
you know they just jumped up and down.
yeah, we know you didn't do that, but I understand why the shot is here.
I gotta say, one of my all-time favorites is in the first Avengers movie when Scarlett Johansson, when Black Widow is being interrogated and she's tied to the chair, and she does a front flip in the chair, and when you watch it, it's so obviously a stunt double, but they did a great job cutting them together. So as soon as she jumps, you see big old beefy ass arms like holding the chair.
Wait, did she do like a? I think she did a missile drop kick into a kip up. Like she kicked someone with her front legs, fell to her back, and then did a kip up, and then like it was with Scarlett Johansson.
But just watch the beginning of that sequence when she does the flip portion. It is a large man that does the flip, and it's hilarious to me.
Yeah, I can tell with those stuffs too. It's one of those nitpicks, but it's like we know it's doubles doing this stuff. You don't need to do a hero shot at the end, like just so that it was the actor. No, it wasn't. But I don't want to make my opinion on Ironheart too much about like that small stuff. I really do enjoy Riri's story right now, and her tragic past, which is something I didn't know about, and I love that because it narratively makes sense. I love that as she brain maps an AI. Sorry for spoilers. As she brain maps, it doesn't create a Tony. It creates her best friend, and I think that makes more sense. But I think the show is off to a good start so far. I'm absolutely enjoying it. Aside from like the first episode, kind of rough around the edges things, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm in the same camp. First episode was a bit rough, and then being introduced to the crew, I had mixed feelings on the crew. But then as we got into the second and third episode, their dynamic just kind of started working for me. And again, you know, Riri is an established character. You know, I mean, we saw her in Black Panther already. So she's already had the tragic backstory. And so that's the only thing I dislike when shows have to do is give us that tragic backstory, but don't give us the opportunity to live in it. And so they're sad on TV, and we're just like, huh, you know what I mean? Like I don't know this, but as they developed it, we got to sit in that place, and we got to understand a lot more. So like, I'm definitely into it, but both episodes 1 and 2 had things that kind of shook me out of it that I found jarring or out of place. But in the third episode, it made them make more sense, right? So
it came together.
The one guy was like, you know, why do you do this? And she's like, because I can. And then out of nowhere, he's like, I do it to feel closer to my dad. I was like, the hell? Why are you telling me this? Like, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean?
I do like Zeke though. Towards the end, it did.
And again, see, and so I thought that was a stupid thing to interject there until the next episode when you find out and you're like, oh, okay. They wanted to warm us up to the dad idea, but like, it was still a little hammy, but you know, I'm enjoying it. It is what it is. I want some more.
I want some more Dominic Thorne.
I mean, yeah.
Eyes wide. Yeah.
Whoa. Okay.
Shout out to NDY's guy on the TikTok side, guys. Thank you so much for 1.1K on TikTok. Help us get to 2K.
Let's see. Chase says, I inherited a lot of tapes from my
Hello,
sister.
hello.
Lots of New Kids on the Block. You know what? I actually did have. I got 2 tapes from my sister, and one of them was Vanilla Ice. And that, like, he has a whole song where it's just him beatboxing weirdly. And it's amazing. And the other tape was Crisscross, which is banger album.
Where's Marcus
Something
these
people
days?
don't talk about it, but I Miss the Bus is great, and it's something I will never ever do again. Oh man, Crisscross.
Where's Marcus these days?
I don't know.
I remember. You remember You Got Served? Marcus and Omarion.
Oh,
That was like the original.
Actually,
That was the original Fast and Furious. And you know what I mean?
stop it.
Boogeyman coming out of the walls. Lord Good says, overall, I'm liking it. The hate online was expected and all the usual haters. Listen, I've been privy to some of the hate, and I swear to God. let me get Choco's perspective too, real quickly. Someone sent me a clip of Tyrone Magnus being like, of course, with their message of being woke and trying to fight against stereotypes, of course, Riri is from the hood, and I'm just like, that's not the hood.
She's not.
She's in a suburb, like it's an apartment, but it's still like a suburb, you know. That's not the hood. I mean,
That's funny. That's that person's stereotype just landing on top of it without actually. that's kind of funny. I've actually been disconnected from reality for the past 2 weeks. There's stuff going. I mean, obviously, my wife had some stuff today.
and Thane is some stuff today as well.
And you know, my grandpa-in-law, I don't know. What do you call it when your grandma like has been married a couple times, but she's been with the latest guy for the past 12 years or over a decade. It's been a long time now, but he's not the grandpa I grew up with. You know what I mean? So like, he's not my grandpa. I don't know what to call him.
I call him uncle. In Philip,
that's because Filipinos and Mexicans are the same. Everyone's uncles, everyone's aunts, everyone's cousins.
Tito.
And my wife gets weirded out when like we're specific. Oh, it's a second cousin or something like that. And she's like, "Oh, how many uncles?" You're like, "No, uncle is your parents' siblings. I have one uncle." You know what I mean? Like, but whatever.
Well, it's not really. It's not the same. It's not the same meaning.
Yeah.
In Filipino, we just call them tito. Like they're just kind of like a relative.
What's funny is in Spanish, it's like the same word for like a monkey, like a primate. And so, someone in my wife's family was like reading something online, and they're like, "Oh, they discovered a new primate," but they thought that meant like they found a long lost cousin, and like, yeah, it's just funny.
What about Tito Ortiz? Monkey Ortiz, grandpa.
So, Time Trav, what's up, Travis? By the way, we got to talk. He sent me a fanfic of his, so we got to chat about it. But anyways, he said, some say Lucasfilm is the problem, others say it's the fans. Whatever happened to the customer is always right. The customer is always right as a concept has always been terrible. And so that's kind of the issue. And I really don't. I think we can expand on this more when we get to that part. But like, when it comes to Star Wars, populism is not the way. Like, your goal shouldn't be, when writing anything, shouldn't be to try to appeal to everything. You should have something to say, right? Because if you try to appeal to everyone, then you end up appealing to no one. To me, that's what happened with The Force Awakens, is they tried to cast with too wide of a net and ended up with not much to say. But yeah, and then like, yeah. And by the way, if the customer is always right is correct, I mean, each of the sequel movies made $1 billion each. That's the customers. So, like, if you feel that way, then you must like them. I have issues with 2/3 of it, so I won't agree with that.
Shout out to Matthew Torres and the TikTok side. What's going on? Look at these two handsome fellas. If I do agree. Also, that the sentiment, the customer is always right, always meant in the service industry that you try to you try to accommodate the customer as much as possible, but it never meant that they were literally right. The customer could very well be wrong, but you're trying to accommodate them as part of being a service worker, and that doesn't mean the customer was correct in the manner.
Then we have the advent of social media and how influencers work. That there's a whole nother monkey wrench in it, where if you have enough followers and enough clout, you can say things that are fundamentally wrong and get enough people to believe something is wrong, and then your whole customer base is skewed. You know what I mean? Like that sort of thing happens a lot in Star Wars.
Oscar says the full quote is, "The customer is always right in matters of taste." Yeah, that's the provenance of the quote itself, but in the service industry, that it's been appropriated to just be like, try your best to accommodate the customer. But you'll notice that whenever a customer is being kind of like being a jackass, there's always the sign that says, "We refuse the right we reserve the right to refuse service." Right? So they could always, doesn't matter at that point.
6.77 credits. Could
But-
the Mandalorians' attachment to the Darksaber a reason for their destruction as a people and leaderless throughout their long history?
Thank you so much to Akane Oye for £5 Tauntaun drop. Could the Mandalorians' attachment to the Darksaber be a reason for their destruction as a people and leaderless throughout their long history? Yes, but it's not it's not only the Darksaber. It is literally their attachment to symbology. I mean, when Revan took the mask of Mandalore the Ultimate and defeated him as well, they fell apart because they didn't have the next Mandalore. They didn't have that symbol. So the same could be said about Darksaber. Like, if your people don't have a basis for leadership based on merits and based on qualifications, and it's entirely based on this symbol or this item, then yeah, it could definitely be a reason for their destruction.
And that's why I was so happy when it was destroyed, because that thing was a curse on them more than anything else. Like, I think it's absolutely the reason for their destruction, because having it is, like you said, it gave the wrong people the ability to lead. Recently, I've been diving into a lot of Dune and Dune related stuff. And I mean, the whole larger message is to be careful of trying to put all of your faith and trust into a single person, like a single cult of personality as a leader, and not to give up your liberties to that person. That's the overall message. And because of their loyalty to the Darksaber, How does Maul become the rightful ruler of Mandalore? That should never happen, right? That's a bad thing. And so, and that's why I always kind of laugh when like Ahsoka wants the Jedi to come in there. It's like that's what they wanted. They overthrew like their democracy to reinstitute this ancient, archaic, idiotic thing, and then it backfired as everyone knew it would. Almost immediately. I don't know.
It also thrusts upon people undue burden. I mean, it's Bo-Katan was thrust with the responsibility because Sabine was like, nah, not me. And then like when Din gets the Darksaber and people started saying he's gonna be the next Mandalore, but he was like, I don't want to do this. I'm gonna just go rock with Grogu at the hut or at the abode.
I mean, not to mention that the another reason that they couldn't get back together was because Giancarlo Esposito had it, and you're like, oh, we can't get together because that dude has the light. And you're like, that's weird.
Segi says culture is important, but being too set in your ways or too strict in dogma can be destructive. Exactly, and thank you for subscribing, Segi.
And that was the other. That's the other message of Dune, is that in order that survival requires freedom and it requires choice and the ability to evolve and change over time, right? His whole end goal ends up being to destroy the ability to see people's futures so that they aren't enslaved to it. Let's see here. Trav says, they shouldn't try to appeal to all people. The majority of fans are the customer, not the masses of noobs. And so, and that's a really odd take, though, because
the masses of noobs are potential customers.
Well, I mean, without new people, the brand dies first and foremost. But again, it's not to say that they were trying to appeal to noobs is fundamentally wrong. The reason, so everyone hated the prequels when they came out, right? They were panned because they were boring, because they weren't like the originals, because there was too much politics and all this stuff. The Force Awakens was literally made for those fans, for the majority of the actual fan base, right? That's what their thinking was. That's why they avoided doing any of the things that the prequels were panned for. And so this idea that modern Star Wars or the new stuff is for noobs is wrong. It's just fundamentally incorrect. What's actually happening is some people will have some people who came from a different generation will have a different idea of how they want the story to go. And that's just not what's being told. And that's okay.
Yeah.
But that's not a problem. That is not wrong, and that is not bad.
Yeah, you really can't impose what your vision of the franchise should be as what the majority of fans think, because everybody has different things. Like you put 1,000 Star Wars hardcore fans into a writer's room, be like, all right, we're gonna give you guys the opportunity to write the next movie, since y'all think we can't do the job right. Nobody's gonna agree on shit in that room. They're all gonna have 1,000 different ideas, and that is the crux of storytelling. Just like Choco said, you have to have somebody that wants to tell a story, and not one that just like kind of like wants to plug into every single fan's mind and try to decipher it.
Exactly. And so like everything that we've seen come out of Star Wars has been made by fans. Again, I I know people on the inside, they're so excited for the project that they're working on. Everyone who's on set is like so excited to be there, and they love this project. They're putting their everything into it, and maybe it doesn't end up where people want it to be, or maybe it's because the people who are in charge of writing things now were the same generation of people who hated the prequels, and the generation that hates everything now is a generation that loved the prequels and wants more prequel stuff. You know what I mean? Like that's more or less what it is. I just wish they would try to understand it from that perspective rather than trying to paint it as, well, everyone who likes the newer stuff, they must be new fans. Also, by the way, if you're a new fan, you are not more important, and you're not you're not more important or better than an old fan. You know what I mean? That's also an ideology that does need to die as well. For me, listen, I love The Last Jedi. There are very few people out there who probably have hit in the same depths of Star Wars research and lore. I am not a new fan. That's for damn sure. But the thing I envy is I have friends who are new to Star Wars. A lot of them came in during the pandemic, and they fell in love with it. And they watch The Bad Batch, and they cry at certain scenes. Like, to me, that's way more impactful than my head knowledge,
My brother doesn't watch any of like the ancillary stuff. He has no Clone Wars knowledge, no Rebels knowledge. He loved Ahsoka. He had a question about who she was, and I told him, but like other than that, he loved the show. So it's I like to say this recently. The only people that call Ahsoka Rebel Season 5 are the people who watched Rebel Season 4. Because if you haven't, you kind of just take Ahsoka for what it is. You know what I mean?
I mean, I just honestly and fundamentally, it's just not. You know what I mean? Ahsoka is in a grand total of like 6 Rebels episodes. And the main thread that we carry on in the show is her, training Sabine, which is not something that came from it. And her big resolution was between her and Anakin, which has nothing to do. You know what I mean? Like, it's just they're both are in the same universe or whatever. But yeah. Also, I'd like to say one last thing is there's a weird delta when it comes to fans. It's not dissimilar to the curve of the uncanny valley. So what I've noticed with Star Wars is you have new fans that'll enjoy these projects, right? And then you'll have like new fans that don't know anything, but like this thing happens, they enjoy it. You have people who know things, but they don't follow it, right? They're not online having conversations, they're not reading anything. They will enjoy it. You have this one section of fan that doesn't read the books, but they will watch lore videos. They will, spend time on Wikipedia. And those are the people that are unhappy. And then after them, you have people who do read the books and are very interested in the lore. And those people like the stuff again. I find, especially with our friend Chet, whenever a lot of us started out watching his videos, but when your knowledge exceeds a certain point, you just can't watch them anymore.
Yeah, you get out.
You know what I mean?
You get out of the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah, and so like you can't. I don't know any deep lore person that can still watch those because of how wrong a lot of the information is. But it's those people who are the most unhappy because they believe they are the truest of the fans. But they don't actually read the source material stuff. So like, how could they be? It's a weird. They don't
thing.
Cite. I should make a chart.
Shout out to Oscar on the TikTok side, Mandalorian Covert, and Eric Schnelker. Let's catch up really quickly. Oscar says, think this is one of the most reasonable Star Wars creators I've seen. Thank you guys. Appreciate the sentiment.
Appreciate that. We try to plumb into some depths, you know.
I it's fun. It's ironic because I want to say there is no try, you know. You're a reasonable person or not, or you choose not to be, you know. That those are the people I call bad faith actors. Mandalorian Covert says, my favorite lore masters. How's it going? It's going good.
Hey, we appreciate it. Craig McGuinn said, did Choco really just say no fan-made Star Wars projects are great? No, I never said that. I don't know where you got that from. You said SC-38 reimagined. Be like, am I a joke to you?
I don't like it.
It's weird that's one. I hate it. I hate that.
SC-38 reimagined tries to make that very emotionally charged duel between master and apprentice just another spectacle. But it wasn't about that.
It's not the they were more concerned with choreography than story, which by the way is okay, you know, and the choreography is not bad. I'm not a fan of some of the camera work, and I think if you're trying to kind of insert something in there, you need to at least film it with the same mindset as the original, you know. But
it was
one of George's
more psychological than physical.
Exactly, and that the way Obi-Wan is like baiting Vader to come over there, and like Obi-Wan was fully in control of that fight from start to finish, and that was like the whole point. And so I think about what happened in the prequels, where there was a crazy, awesome scene that was all choreographed with Palpatine, and Mace Windu, using a stand-in, of course. And George was like, no, we're gonna put Ian McDiarmid up there because I want him. The story's him. You know, I want his face. I want his expressions. I want those because that's more important than the choreography.
I'm reacting to Time Trap says I'm reacting to the premise of the podcast. Fans have lost the plot. It implies that fans are wrong to be dissatisfied. That's the furthest from the truth.
Yeah, I was like, lost the plot doesn't mean that you can't.
So
yeah, it's not what lost the plot means.
The title of the podcast is Star Wars Fans Have Lost the Plot. The thumbnail says fans still misunderstand Star Wars. And so the premise of this episode is to talk about things that are
common misunderstandings.
Yeah, routinely misunderstood, routinely gotten incorrect. And we started off lightly with the whole, you know, it wasn't Luke's attachment to Anakin that saved him. It was his love. You know, and people conflate the two being with they conflate love for being an attachment, which it isn't. You know?
Which every single Jedi, like they all love each other a lot. You know, I know those are always weird. When they're like the Jedi, they're not allowed to have any emotions. Like we've never seen an emotionless Jedi except for Aayla Secura, or not Aayla Secura, except for well, what's her name? The Mary Allen.
Oh, Barriss Offee?
Her master.
Oh, Luminara?
Yeah. Luminara is the closest, I think, to zero emotion.
Even then, in that episode of the Clone Wars, she expressed pride for Barriss.
You know, I know people be like, well, Mace Windu, he doesn't show them. Mace Windu is so emotional that he had to invent another style of combat because he was so emotional.
But Star Wars certainly is not what it used to be when it comes to adding to pop culture. Episode 1 through 6 did this, but the majority of the new stuff is just not as powerful, and that's the failure I see on Lucasfilm. I would disagree, because the majority of the new stuff has brought in a significant amount of new fans in a way that the zeitgeist has changed. The same way
it's changed greatly. Yeah.
The same way Critical Role has changed the zeitgeist on D&D and how everyone plays D&D now. it's cool to go see a Marvel movie. It's cool to go see a Star Wars movie. Whereas when I was growing up, being a Star Wars fan was largely an ostracization, or I was ostracized for being a Star Wars fan. I was a nerd. I was a geek. It's cool to be a Trekkie today, too. Like, a lot of this stuff has changed the zeitgeist of fandom, where fandom is a cool thing. Oh, you're a fan of Lord of the Rings? Oh, you're a fan of Game of Thrones? Oh, you're a fan of Wheel of Time? Like, all of this fandom stuff, like whether it's Star Wars or something else, it's cool to be a fan of something.
Yeah.
You know, whereas you were a geek back then.
Also, I would say that it's wrong to say that 1 through 6 added to pop culture. I mean, certainly the original trilogy did. You know, it reinvented.
I'm a member of the DYAD squadron.
Oh, thank you. It absolutely reinvented what the modern blockbuster was, and like George Lucas did so much stuff with the original trilogy. You broke so many barriers, and that absolutely dominated the culture. But the pop culture references to the prequels are all negative, all of them. Like, it didn't add to it in a good way. And again, the way the sequels have added to it in the wider scope of things is probably on par with, if not already greater than, the prequels editions. As long as you're outside of a very, very specific circle of people, the common knowledge between Star Wars, you know, after the fact is huge now.
Shout out to Kenny for being a DYAD squad member for 37 months. That's 1 month over 36 months.
By the way, Kenny, I don't know if
3 years,
Pep reached out to you or not, but I remember you basically, you know, he spoke to someone at TikTok and they mentioned that there is something where if you are filming in your car, you will be seen less, right? And I know you had all your videos are from your car, and so yeah, okay, just making sure.
Yeah, I finally have a contact at TikTok for being an established creator, and so everything goes through them. And you know, they're an open door policy. So whenever I have questions about a new algorithm, we'll get that information. But yes, the algorithm as a back-end tool doesn't know whether you're driving or not, or parked. So it's going to flag your content. It's not going to flag it for, like, you know, copyright or anything. It's just going to say, this doesn't seem safe. So
yeah. Until get instantly less circulation. You know, they don't want to promote that type of things. Sega says Ahsoka made me want to watch Clone Wars. It got me interested in older content, and that's something we've been seeing tons and tons of. I know so many people who were longtime Star Wars fans were not interested in any of the animated stuff, and now they are. You know, and
I mean, all you have to do is just go to a Star Wars Celebration to see how much it's grown.
And do you remember, you know, now that they mentioned that we've been doing this for 5 years now, do you remember how much people hated Rebels when we started?
Yeah.
That was weird, right? And you see how much it has influenced everything in Star Wars, and how, yeah, I don't know. I think it's fantastic.
Shout out to Von Zoom. Thank you for the 2 roses. Mandalorian Covert says, not as powerful. Bro, I cried when I played Jedi Survivor. Like, what?
That's yeah. Yeah.
Darth Angel says, I was an old fan, lost interest, and became a new fan with all the new Disney projects. You know, and that's one of the truths that you can't really deny, is that it brought Star Wars back into the conversation. You may have been following, like us, through like SOTOR and the expanded universe of old, but like, yeah, truthfully, there were a lot of people that fell off of Star Wars. The thing about franchises is that it's going to continue to grow and continue to be new as old creators age out of that creative process and new creators age into it, right? Otherwise, how old is George Lucas? We would have an 80-plus-year-old making movies. And some people, like, I think Scorsese is the only person that's, like, doing that. Coppola, maybe. But, like...
Is Coppola still making movies? I don't know.
But, like, you would be asking Star Wars or any kind of fandom these days to still be being made by people that are old, you know? And some people are still there, like Doug Chang, Sostak, Hidalgo. There's a lot in ILM as well that are still there.
One of the funniest things I always hear is when people are like, man, I wish they didn't sell to Disney so we wouldn't have Kathleen Kennedy. And it's like, it doesn't matter where they sold it. Kathleen Kennedy would be running it. You'll realize that was in the contract.
Yeah, George Lucas made that move way before the sell.
Yeah, so if he was already trying to transition her into leadership before the sell, but if they had sold to HBO, she would still be running it. You know, it's let's see. VGC says
this is the last time I'm going to address this though. He says the zeitgeist has more or less abandoned Star Wars. Even if I were to grant you that, it would be your echo chamber. But I can't grant you that because that side still keeps up with Star Wars. They still watch new projects, even if it's just to hate it. Like, no one has abandoned Star Wars. It makes them money. Outrage merchants, chud nuggets, carpet nuggets. It's there to make money.
Yeah, and there's this kind of idea that is, you know, the largest portion of fans, when in reality it's not. It's very much not, but that's just how algorithms and culture rewards, you know, outrage. There's a lot of people who are also tapped into those things just because they are culture war fans. You know what I mean? If they talk more about culture war stuff, then you'll collect those fans as well who aren't necessarily Star Wars fans. But yeah. BGC says watching lore videos without bothering to fact check is why we get such bad fans, because they inject their opinions of the subject without verifying if it's true. Yes,
trust
and which verify. By the way, that's okay. I'm not saying don't go to Wikipedia. I'm not saying don't watch lore videos. I want you to understand that. What I mean, what I'm trying to express is, don't go online and hate a project because it broke canon if you haven't read that canon. You haven't verified that it broke that canon, right? You know, don't complain that something is not like the book if you didn't read the book, because that's not your criticism. And so that's the other, and that's kind of why we like talking with people who like things, because whenever I ask you, why do you like this film? Why did you like that movie? You know, whatever. People talk about how it touched them as individuals, and those are always great conversations. When it's negative conversations, they usually are regurgitating something that they've gotten elsewhere. You know what I mean? Like, it's not even in their own words, and it's the same things. And so if people would also personalize, I didn't like it because of this, rather than generalize, we, the people, the royal we, that's when it gets problematic. That's when it gets murky, because it's just not true.
And to kind of add on to what Choco was saying about they're mostly just culture warriors, just to provide a relevant, a time-sensitive example, is that people are hating Ironheart because of Slug. And they're not talking about Slug being a hacker, because that's what Slug is about in the show. They're talking about Slug being a queer person. And that couldn't be further from the truth. They don't make it an important point in the show. They said, this is Slug. They're a hacker, and that's it. Like that's what they do in the show. They hack. There's no like lecture or soapbox about how they're queer and that's their identity. That crowd is they are inserting identity politics into the show that doesn't have identity politics. It's just them existing.
Yeah. One of the funny things that I noticed that I've talked about it before is when I started making content at the beginning, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna make a Star Wars book club. And when I did, it immediately flooded with primarily women wanting to do this. And at that time, I was taken back because I was like, oh, I didn't realize there were so many women who were into Star Wars. I honestly didn't know that when I first started making content. What I found out is this loud crowd, they are not the majority, but they push out everyone who isn't with them, or they make it unbearably uncomfortable for them. You know what I mean? Like, it's like if you throw a party and you invite over me and a bunch of white supremacists, I'ma leave. You know what I mean? But it's like, it's not this, I'm still there, and so I that's why one of the reasons why we make the content we talk to all these people is because there was really no space. The most Star Wars fans are not online talking about Star Wars. The vast majority.
Yeah, I'd imagine if I go to like Star Wars Celebration and asked every single person for their socials, I'd probably get like 6. Yeah, no.
Well, I mean, take Star Wars Celebration for example. When we look online, if you go to Star Wars Twitter and you see all this garbage and stuff, it's usually the same people. There's less people doing that sort of thing than there is actually physically going to celebrations. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, and especially when you look at the actual numbers, you look at, and they're like, oh, the Acolyte, which was supposedly hated by everyone, was still one of the most popular thing on one of the largest streaming platforms available. And I keep getting people like, oh, I watched it, I don't know why everyone was hating on it. There's like, I don't know.
Well, the thing is, if you look at the Luminate's streaming data for Disney Plus, Star Wars and Marvel, largely Star Wars, is one of their most viewed content. Even 6 months out, Acolyte was having good viewership after the fact. Like 6 months out from its last episode. And when you say I meet lots of people in person, this is a funnel of people who dig Disney Star Wars, I can't give that any credence, because Star Wars still gets great numbers. If it were losing money and if it were dying and the majority of fans have abandoned it, it would not be getting millions and millions of minutes watched on its streaming data. And that's not one person trying to be like, oh, I'm gonna offset all of this. Like, no, like, people are watching this stuff. Not everybody is on the YouTube side chatting with us.
Also, it's great if you've met a lot of people in person who hate it. I will say I've met in person like hundreds and hundreds of people who do. It's so anecdotal that I mean, I can say just because a lot of people near me drive Volkswagens doesn't mean that that's the most popular car in the world. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even understand that ideology or thought process. But more importantly, I don't understand why it matters. Because something being popular shouldn't be the metric. And if that is the metric, then they are widely successful currently.
Well, you see, Adam says, I like Ironheart so far. The first episode was a bit meh, 6.7 out of 10, but episode 2 was way better, and episode 3 was fire. That kind of like mirrors.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
Our
I would. I'd probably be lower on the first two episodes if I'm being honest, but episode 3 was good enough for me.
Yeah.
Um,
There's
let's
8 billion
see.
people, so there's a market for everything. I'm saying a bigger market for a better Star Wars is out there, which I still can't get behind, because what is your metric for better Star Wars? It's, again, you're trying to appeal to a majority that really doesn't exist, because everybody can't agree on what is a better Star Wars to them. Everybody has different rankings. You know, me and Choco, for the most part, being a dyad, still have different rankings. This whole chat has different rankings. Everybody that is a Star Wars fan that's not chronically online will have different rankings of Star Wars. You can't get 10 people in a room together that all agree on what is a better Star Wars. So you can't appeal to this kind of ghost majority that is like, there's a market for better Star Wars. It's like, what do you mean? Well, everybody is always down for a good Star Wars, but like, that's like saying like us in general, like this community doesn't care about a better Star Wars. Like,
yeah, and I was gonna say, like, that's not wrong. People will just have different ideas of what a better Star Wars is or means or represents. The Jedi historian says, my best friends fall for the fake hate and end up disliking new content before they even give it a chance. That's also a problem with it, right? It's something that's self-fulfilling. But again, even in my randomized conversations, like that's still, if you know anything about statistics, that's the absolute worst way to try and grab any sort of data. Because the people that you are meeting are and talking to are usually going to be people that have something in common with you. And maybe that thing that they have in common is why they're in this spot. Or like myself and a lot of other people I know who love Star Wars and love both new and old stuff. They don't engage in conversations about Star Wars until they hear what you have to say. I know so many, especially women, when you're like, you see a new Star Wars film, even if they love Star Wars, they'll be like, no, because listen, I don't want to hear you talk about how much you hate this for the next half an hour. I do that. I talk about Star Wars constantly, and there's some people I just like. I'm not. It's not for me.
Just the bottom line is, I don't like the premise that, or I don't agree with the premise that.
The premise is fundamentally wrong.
If you are a fan of Star Wars today, you are not a part of the majority that is for a better Star Wars, which is fundamentally like what your statement was alluding to. We all want and love a better Star Wars. We loved Andor. Like we didn't watch Andor. It's like, oh, this is great, but we want mediocre Star Wars. no one said that. We all love it. Alicia said, without Disney, I wouldn't be watching this stream. Thank you, Ellie, for watching and being a part of this.
We appreciate you. Thank you. But yeah, I mean, that's at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. It's like there's this weird divide that. I mean, honest, as weird for me to say, I was gonna say there's a divide that one side creates, which is true, but it's a weird feeling sentence. But that it's a rift between new and old fans, or it's a rift between Star Wars fans and Disney Star Wars fans. No, I'm a Star Wars fan. I like Star Wars. I like some past things. I like some current things. I hate some things in the past, and I hate some current things. Like. I don't. It's a weird conversation. People, yes, we want better Star Wars, and that's why, Jedi Survivor, fantastic game. That series, fantastic. We want a better Star Wars. We got Andor, which was arguably some of the best Star Wars that we've gotten. Do we want more stuff like that? Do we think they should continue to make products and keep taking chances? Like, I don't. It's a weird idea.
Yeah, there's no real demarcation between fans. I think the only dichotomy that exists...
It's artificial.
Yeah, I think the only dichotomy that exists are the people that follow culture warriors and chuds, and then the rest are Star Wars fans, whether they hate the latest project or like it. you know, because if you like the prequels,
That's-
guess what? You're still a Star Wars fan. Like, you didn't abandon Star Wars because you like the prequels and hate the new stuff. You still like something that's Star Wars, right?
And you said it better than I do. That is what it is. I feel like there's people who divide it, and there's people who just like Star Wars.
Yeah. I still read Legends books. I still love KOTOR SOTOR. It's not going anywhere. Same. And I always gotta point out my favorite.
I have a Legends tattoo.
My favorite tattoo is Malgus and Satil with Legends Ashla and Bogan Moons. Like,
one of the cool things, dude, is that's Cal4 in the chat, who is one of our good friends now. And we met him because we were all reading the High Republic at the same time. You know what I mean? It's oh my goodness. And
listen,
I'm sad it's coming to an end, but it's such a beautiful part of the fandom.
Listen, you come to a DYAD con and you try to be negative, but it's so fun. It's like, you know, being around friends that all dislike and like different parts of Star Wars, but you can all still just be chill with each other and like commiserate over what unites you rather than divides you. That's fandom at its best.
Thank you. That's what I was unable to put together. There's this idea that, like, well, if you like Disney, that means you love all of the projects, and you're like, no, it doesn't mean that at all. We have so many friends who disliked the Acolyte. I am not a big fan of Ahsoka. You know, I liked the lore in there, but I thought it missed in a lot of places. You know, I have a lot of complaints about Obi-Wan. Now there are some early
thing for me, but I always say I love Ahsoka with my lore brain, and I love Andor for my like critical storytelling brain.
Exactly. There are some projects though that I do give extra credit to. Not extra credit, but I'm not as harsh on Obi-Wan, and I'm not as harsh on the Book of Obi. I'm not as harsh on anything that was filming during the pandemic. There were weird stuff happening. There's weird circumstances. And so I won't use that to judge the franchise. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you watched Heroes when it came out. That's arguably the greatest first season of anything ever. I was hooked.
Yeah.
But there was that writer's strike, and then everything else was just terrible. And you're like,
it was very unique in the beginning.
It's not their fault though. There was this other extenuating circumstances, you know? You know what I found out is that the show Gargoyles was ruined because of O.J. Simpson. They actually tried to do a long format, like telling out a long format story rather than having it episodic. But the problem was the O.J. Simpson trial kept coming on at the same time and co-opting their time slot. And so the story was being told out of order. And so no one could figure out what was going on. And so it got canceled. I think that's pretty funny.
So guys in the chat, TikTok side, YouTube side, Twitch side, as we ramp up towards our main talking points, is there anything in Star Wars that you've heard said via comment or just via conversation that just really like strikes you as really, really wrong? Like I provided the good example at the beginning of the episode where people thought that Luke's attachment saved Anakin, but it was his love, and love is not an attachment. So is there anything that people have told you, you've read, that kind of strikes you as fundamentally wrong and misunderstood in Star Wars? Leave that in the chat as we catch up.
One of my favorite ones that I see pop up from time to time is Kylo Ren shouldn't have lost because I'll say the sentence that I hear more often verbatim, and it frustrates me. He shouldn't have lost because he's a fully trained Sith Lord, and getting hurt makes you stronger. Not weaker. And you're like, no. First of all, he's not fully trained.
Mm-hmm.
They've made that clear. He left Luke before finishing his training, and even Snoke says, "We'll need to finish your training." Right? He's not fully trained, but also you connect through the Force based off of your emotions. So when the concept of pain makes you stronger, that's internal pain. That's emotional pain, right? In the expanded universe, Palpatine created Vader's suit to be painful to wear, right? But that wasn't the pain making him stronger. The pain was stoking his hatred, and that made him stronger. By the way, that's not canon, which makes so much more sense how it is in canon. Vader creates and maintains his own suit because he's a techie who loves making tech and playing with robots and stuff. There's no way he would let Palpatine control that. Like, that's super weird. But again, it's emotional pain that'll make you stronger. And there's zero. Tell me one time where getting hurt made someone stronger in Star Wars. Tell me once where that happened.
Not stronger, but sustain them. Which we have to point out that your connection to the Force.
What? Look at Darth Maul for instance. What did Darth Maul say sustained him? Was it his pain?
His single. I'm trying to think of the quote, but it was his hatred for Kenobi.
Exactly. It was his singular hatred for you. Is what sustained him. It wasn't the pain from being cut in half. It was his hatred. It was his emotional pain. You know, like it's so weird. Like, no, physical pain doesn't make you stronger. Anakin being burned and having his limbs cut off didn't turn him into a god. Dooku getting his hands cut off didn't make him more powerful. Didn't make him start shooting lightning missiles out of his stumps or whatever, which would have been cool. Like, it literally never. Someone was like, "Well, Darth Sion," and you're like, didn't make him stronger. He was just too angry to die. And by the way, anger is an emotion. It wasn't a physical pain. There's no time when physical pain makes them stronger.
We also have to point out that your connection to the Force is largely based on your stamina as well. We have many examples of this in the books where, you know, in Brotherhood, I believe, Obi-Wan's on Kanan Amoidia. He's like, I could use Force speed right now, but then I wouldn't have the stamina to continue after the fact. And so, like, even if the dark side could sustain you in pain, just like in The Force Awakens, that wound is going to take its toll, and it's going to zap him of the stamina needed to continually connect to the Force, which is why he gets pushed back after so long. So no, it's not like this like never-ending thing that you can constantly draw upon limitlessly. You know.
Yeah.
Darth Angel says, "I heard that Yoda was not a good Jedi." I mean, for 900 years, he was pretty great. I mean, he failed, yeah, for sure. Made some mistakes, but I wouldn't call that not a good Jedi, you know.
I'm sorry. I think the Yoda hate that I see, and it's you know, it's common in our community, and some of our friends, you know, feel the same way. But I think it's so dumb. I'm sorry. It's not based off of anything. It's based off of an idea of something, right? But not what. It's not based on anything he's actually done or anything he's actually said. It's what they imagine in their head, which I know means that they are just putting their frustrations with something else on top of Yoda and not looking at the actual character.
Yeah.
Time Trav says, "Here, I like to kick up dirt because it's interesting to hear your arguments." Yeah. And by the way, I mean, I didn't think this was confrontational or an argument.
We always engage in this stuff, you know, willingly.
Yeah. I just think there's fundamentally flawed ideology of believing something is in the majority or is correct or represents more people when that data is just not accurate.
The Book of Boba Fett Mos Espa chase scene is based on the OJ Bronco police chase. I will not hear otherwise. Well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you something else about Book of Boba Fett, though. I do not like his resolution with trading in the ilk or the yoke of criminal crime bosses and trying to become a daimyo himself. I feel like that arc just did not match with the setup of the earlier episodes. And
I can see that.
And I wanted Boba Fett when the Tuskens got attacked. I wanted Boba Fett to unite the Tuskens and the Sand People, and have them as kind of like his pseudo, lordship minions thing, whatever you call it, instead of like, becoming a crime boss himself.
I mean, you make a strong point there, because like he's like, I'm tired of us dying because we're caught in some stupid feud between people. And then he starts a feud with people where his people die. You know what I mean? I mean, also that show just did not do a good job with its villain. And that's why I say, again, we need more writers' rooms, because that show absolutely feels like something that was written without a writer's room, It kind of like, honestly, kind of like the same issues with that I talk about with the Phantom Menace, where the person creating it, it's just them, and they have the story in their head, and they're trying to tell it, but they're like, it's like they're chasing a cat, and so the idea comes out, but there's not a true through line. There's not a true protagonist. It doesn't have the skeleton of an actual story. That's what the Book of Boba Fett suffers from, right? It's trying to sell an idea without anything solidifying what it is, I always talk about, we don't know the names of any Pikes, not single one. We don't know who the boss was. We don't know. So like, how are they the big villains? How are they the big bad? We got introduced to a big bad at the very end of the second to last episode, which also means that his feud with them is not anything that was foreshadowed or built up or explained or meaningful within the context of the show that created it. I honestly think that he should have gone up against the two Hutts that were Jabba's relatives. Like maybe they wanted to, there was a power vacuum and they were trying to take over, and that's who his enemy. So we'd have the face of an enemy in a direct conflict.
And they should have introduced Cad Bane earlier. I feel
like,
if
they were gonna have him, you should introduce him, or at least hint that there's someone behind the scenes, or that they're bringing in their ringer who can take this guy down. You got to do something.
Yeah. Jedi Historian says how people still think the balance means the same number of Force users for light and dark. Yeah, that's tried and true misunderstanding.
I don't understand how anyone can think that. Like it's so like if that's what balance is supposed to be.
I think it largely comes from George Lucas, who and he doesn't say this. He says in one of the commentaries that and Anakin does bring balance to the Force by eliminating himself and Darth Sidious. And I feel like people took that quote to mean like, oh, so like you have to eliminate Force users to bring balance. I don't know. That could be. I don't know.
But like even the idea in and of itself is like, so at the end of Return of the Jedi, there's not balance because both of the Sith are gone and we have a Jedi left. Anakin was the Jedi who returned, right? So he came back to the light when he died, and also when we jump into the trilogy, is we're out of balance towards the dark. But we have Yoda and Obi-Wan alive.
Survivors. But I also think that's
so. Wouldn't that be balance if all we knew was Obi-Wan and Yoda, and Vader and Palpatine? Wouldn't that be balanced? Like, it's such a dumb idea that, like, if you think about it for a half a second, you're like, it doesn't even fit.
Also, some people think that, like, Order 66 was part of the balancing happening. They're like, yeah, because the Jedi had to fall to balance things out with the Sith, because there's only two. It's like, no, that wasn't part of the prophecy. That was literally Palpatine's doing. That's him imbalancing the Force even more. The Sith, just like, and I like this because it's in Trials of the Jedi. It's not a story spoiler by any means, but there is a quote that further says, "The Force is a river," and I'm just like, I'm so proud of that. You know, and it's true. Like, the Sith eternally change its current and dam it up, and are constantly throwing things out of balance. Palpatine's whole design on Order 66 was not a balancing act for the Jedi's 10,000 in number. It was more imbalance.
Would you mind if I read something from the Big Red Book?
Sure.
Let me see.
But it's also 5 years after Jabba died, so the vacuum seemed silly. Yeah.
Oh, there would still be a vacuum there. 5 years?
Yeah, it all depends on who's vying for it, you know, because there's going to be a constant contention.
No, I'm like, even in the expanded universe, 5 years after the original trilogy, like, they still didn't, like, the Empire still ruled Coruscant. You know what I mean? They still had to take it back. Like, I don't know. There's still a lot of stuff, you know, going on. But keep talking while I find this.
Chase says that is also a convenient plot point to cover up why Obi-Wan doesn't force speed through the plasma gates. I mean, yeah, it's convenient, but it also just makes sense. You know, the Force has always been tied to stamina in one way, shape, or form. You know, when Yoda says, "Size matters not. Judge me by my size, do you?" And then people point to him kind of like, you know, kind of breathing a little bit heavy after lifting the X-Wing. It wasn't because the X-Wing was big. It's because he's old. He doesn't have a lot of stamina. You know?
By the way, that's another misconception that drives me crazy, is that, like, how can Rey do this? Luke couldn't even lift the X-Wing. And you're like,
Luke didn't believe
he could lift the X-Wing. That was the whole point. He didn't believe he could, and that's why he didn't. Size matters not. Like, that's literally what's being explained to you in that scene. Like, I don't know. Some people are so mad that
the quote is there in the movie. He's like, I don't believe it. And it's like, that is why you fail. And we love to point out this distinction between Luke and Rey. Rey is a sponge. She's an open book. She's like, so the Jedi were real? And she's asking this of Han. And she has all of these stories, and she has all of this mythology behind her. And when she goes to Luke and finally trains with Luke, he's like, reach out for the Force, and she reaches out to try to grasp something tangible. She believes wholeheartedly in everything, whereas Luke comes very skeptical. He's like, I don't even know what I'm doing here. I'm wasting my time. And that's when Yoda's like, I can't teach him. You know? That's why Luke couldn't lift it.
But at the same time, she's unable to connect with Force Ghosts. She's unable to connect deeply with, you know, I feel like Luke naturally was gifted in his connection to the cosmic Force, and I think Rey was gifted in connection to the living Force. I think that's really the big difference. But anyways, this is the quote I wanted to read from the big Red Book.
Shout out to Natsa on the TikTok side. My favorite line from all of Star Wars might be, "A failure, our greatest teacher is," or the greatest teacher failure is. But yeah, that's a great line too.
Banger. George Lucas says, the Sith practice the dark side and are way out of balance. the Jedi aren't as much out of balance because they're the light side of the Force. They still have the bad side of the Force in them, but they keep it in check. It's always there, so it can always erupt if you let your guard down. Like, shouldn't that tell you right there? He calls it the bad side. Basically, he says imbalance is people using the dark side. That causes the imbalance. That is the imbalance. And everyone has the ability to fall. So, I'm speaking. It says, could Yoda's species be Force convinced? Or do you mean condensed? Like they are a chunk of Force? I don't know.
If
I'm
no
curious.
one knows where they're from, and the 3 we've seen are highly Force sensitive, I think it could have been cool if the Force creates them when needed. I think Force conceived.
Oh, conceived. Okay.
I have a standing theory that Yoda's species are just called Jedi, and that's where they got it. But we're never going to. That's never going to be revealed to us, unfortunately.
I don't know. I think absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. I think just because all of the ones that we've seen from a species are Force sensitive does not imply in any way, shape, or form that all of his species are Force sensitive. I mean, it might be a cool theory, but like I also our stories are following the Jedi, so it makes sense that, and they're pretty rare.
There is a line in absolutely everything you need to know about Star Wars, and it says about Grogu. Those coming from Grogu's species are highly sensitive to the Force. Now, that could be a statement based on what we've seen from the species we know of, or that could be generally their species. You know, much like we know of, I forget old dude's species as well. The one who helps Ahsoka, Terra Sanube. Their species is also highly Force sensitive.
But at the same time, we have people like Wookiees, whose species is not very sensitive in the Force, and that's actually because George Lucas didn't want Wookiees to be Jedi, and literally made that a rule. And it's funny, in this book, there's actually one of the first concept art pieces of art for a Wookiee Jedi, and it looks badass. But George was like, "No, Wookiees can't be Jedi." I'm glad that he came around of that and gave us Gunji, and also the lore surrounding it, I think, is incredible. Because his species is so tapped into nature that it would make so much sense for that to be natural to them. I also love the concept that they spend their first 40 years on Kashyyyk. So they aren't taken in like quite as infants, but they also don't, struggle with attachments because their entire species views their whole planet as an ecosystem, and so their love for each other is exactly the same as the love that Jedi share for everyone, right? The same unconditional love. There's no conflict.
Yeah, I don't think that the species is conceived by the Force, because then that would really kind of cheapen Anakin's story. But I am in line with how we encounter all kinds of species in the galaxy. There are some that are highly sensitive, some that are less sensitive, and so I would imagine that Yoda's species, if there is some verdict to be had here, is highly sensitive. Their species is highly sensitive.
Or maybe all of them, like, it's just a really high percentage. So almost all of them are Force sensitive except for one, and his name is like Jeff, and he's just like, come on, man.
Well, this
come
is
on,
also,
man.
Well,
and people are like floating around, and he's like, damn it.
Well, in addition to this thinking, I also concede that there could be some in Yoda species that are Force sensitive but are weak in the Force, not as much as Yoda. You know what I mean? So Yeah, I think every species has their own kind of idiosyncratic connection to the Force.
Okay, challenge for everyone here, everyone in the chat. I want you to make your own species of Star Wars. Invent something and let me know if you could create a species. What would you create?
Shout out to Naza in the chat. Let's see. Can I ask both you and Brandon what you think will be Grogu's fate? And do you think Ahsoka is alive during the sequels? I do think Ahsoka is alive during the sequels. I don't know what Grogu's fate will be, but I hope that it's still just kind of chilling with Din, you know. I think Grogu's fate is definitely not to be a Jedi and to have a greater role in things. I think Grogu's fate is to be Din's companion.
I'm trying to think of the term again. I've been really into Dune recently. I think he becomes their version of the something Shadrach. What?
Bene Gesserit?
No. So what the Bene Gesserit are ultimately trying to create.
Oh.
Right. The perfect being that aligns with both Bene Gesserit and Mentat and, you know, has the spice visions for the future and like, you know what I mean? Like they're end goal. What they're called.
That term is on the tip of my tongue too.
Yeah, and it's hard to say because like I feel like I would just be saying like a Jewish name, you know, which is weird because like there are also Jews in Dune. I just think that's weird. Like later on, like they, yeah, they're still chilling in space and stuff, but that's what I think. I think he has many lifetimes. Yes, Kazet Haderach. I think he has the ability to live many lives, right? And he's going to spend his time as a Mandalorian and become Mandalore. But eventually he's going to become disillusioned, right? Because everyone surrounding him, all the people that he loves, are going to, you know, grow old and pass away. And then maybe he spends time learning the Force and learning the ways of the Jedi. And then maybe, you know, I want him to be like...
Good night, Naza.
The dude at the end of time that's like... you know, like Grogu is the one telling us Star Wars.
Well, yeah, Illy seems to agree. Grogu was able to commune with the great creature of legend, the one only the Mandalore is supposed to be able to do. His destiny, in my opinion, is to become the Mandalore. Well, Din also saw a mythosaur. So there's that part of Mandalore as well. So we don't know what that portends for Din.
Yeah. I'm a Spooky Kitty says, by the way, I still want to hear your alien concepts just because I think that's really cool. I'm a Spooky Kitty says, I don't know, probably some giraffe inspired alien that would be wacky. Sorry, my mental image is like two of them pop up, and one is a person with just a giraffe head, like not even a long neck, just a giraffe head on the shoulders, and then the other one is another humanoid not humanoid. The other one is the exact opposite. It's a giraffe with just a human head on top. You're just like, hey guy.
I can't help but picture the camel from the Alabasta Arc. What's his name? Was it Whiskers? It wasn't Whiskers. It was
I can't remember. It was too long ago. I can picture him, but I can't. I don't remember his name.
He was a pervert. Agent Damask says, brainstorm a species that feeds on kyber crystals and gives them lightsaber-like powers. So are you talking about like limbs that are like plasma, or so here's another misunderstanding that I like to clear up.
Lightsaber arms.
The kyber crystal does not generate the plasma. The kyber crystal is an amplifier. They have power cells. That's why the Death Star still needed fusion reactors and ignition reactors to create this plasma, and the crystals to amplify it to its deadly potency. So I got a comment that said, well, if Osha is touching the crystal while she's bleeding it, shouldn't it be hot? It's like, no, because the crystal doesn't generate the laser. It is amplifying it. And lightsabers have magnetic fields to insulate the heat. Otherwise, their hilts would also be hot.
Yeah, I don't know if so some friends of mine made thermite. And so we tried lighting it, and it singed my buddy's eyebrows. And she was pretty far away. So like, yeah, without that, just turning on a lightsaber in general would like run the risk of like burning off your facial hair.
Yeah. Well, I'm not overthinking it. Well, Agent of Mask, I do think that like a species that is naturally attuned to kyber crystals, not necessarily giving them lightsaber like powers, but like something to do with the crystals in general.
Yeah, I mean, we weren't trying to like hate on your idea or something like that. Like there
Agent
could
of
be
Mask knows what we're all about.
yeah, but it would be interesting if there was a creature or a species that fed on them, and that like if their bodies synthesize energy in and of themselves, and they could use that to help like amplify that or amplify their strength or their abilities, and that would make them kind of a natural enemy to the Jedi. And I think you could play around and do some cool stuff with that. Although if I was writing it, I would make them like monsters that live on like a planet where you get crystals. And so like it gets really dangerous to try to get one. I think that'd be cool.
I forget the name of the creature. I'm usually so good with the lore, but I'm drawing blank on that one. Are you talking about the Rancor that Grogu tamed?
Din saw the creature, but he wasn't able to tame it like the Mandalorian Jedi. No, she's talking about the Mythosaur. Yeah, she's talking about the Mythosaur, because supposedly, you know, the first like rode him.
But what Grogu is that saying that Grogu connected with the Mythosaur?
Yes. Now, I don't think that was explicit in there, but perhaps. He has shown to have the ability to connect very easily with everything, including the Rancor, and you know.
He was able to sit on a giant ball and send out a distress signal through the Force.
That's true. I sat on my balls and I sent a distress signal to my wife. Sometimes it's hot. You're swinging low. I don't know. Anyways, Time Chef says, I met a species when I was a kid. Imagine Arnold's body with a snake lower half, father ears, cat eyes, and a razor sharp Cheshire grin. That's actually kind of sick. I'd be interested because like it feels like you know how you have the outline of a cobra with its like gills, but like that's like instead of that being its thing, it's like his lats.
Chelsea Ramos.
I think I'm having internet issues.
Yeah, you're robotic right now, and I don't know.
Domo, Mr. Domo.
Phineas McCormick is thinking a hive mind algae-like species that can manipulate liquids that they occupy. Oh,
interesting, right? Because that's be super. Because algae, they do. I mean, they affect the ecology of where they're in, and if you're conscious, you might be able to do that like manually. You might be able to, you know, make this liquid poisonous to that species or whatever. You know, change the pH balance and burn people. I don't know. That could be cool. I like that.
Well, I'm trying to figure out who won the game. I think
The species I want is like a big like amoeba type creature that as it gets older, it learns how to shape itself, and it learns how to shape itself into whatever shape it wants. So more often than not, they will mimic humanoid form so that they just like fit in with the galaxy. But whatever form they take, like they aren't shapeshifters. It's something that they consciously do and slowly. So you end up staying that way or continue. You know what I mean? It's a slow change. But what I want is for that species to recreate by meiosis. And so I want all of its memories, all of its thoughts, all of its experiences, all of that just get divided in half when it reproduces. And so if this one remembers this, that one does not. And so basically they all do that, and then they become a little globular and they have to start over. And so all of them have these weird collections of memories and experiences, but from different places, and none of them are the same. I think that could be really cool.
That that kind of a little bit coincides with the species I was thinking about, which kind of goes around and is an amalgamation of everything it sees, and it's a luminary. I would call it, like, the working title of the species is the luminary, and they exist only in light.
So sorry, my mind just made it a collection of Project Luminous authors. A weird multi-headed.
So it's essentially like an energy species that only exists within not like the light side of the Force. It only exists and can exist within a light source, something that is refracting or that is pushing away darkness. It's kind of like the polar opposite of, I forget which movie it was, but it was that one horror movie where like they were in the darkness and they could get you in the
Perfect
darkness.
Dark?
No,
the one with Vin Diesel?
No. I forget what movie it was, but like they had to stay in the light to avoid this monster.
Oh.
But this would be the polar opposite, just a species that can only, so like they would exist on a planet that, is kind of like parts of Earth where it's perpetually lit by the sun.
You know what's interesting? In the Heir to the Empire trilogy, there was like there's Lando buys like a space mining guild that's like mining a specific thing on this one planet. But it's interesting because the planet rotates very slowly, which means one side of it is super hot all the time, and then the other side is freezing cold all the time. And so the mining platform is like a mobile city that continually moves at the same speed as the planet, and it sits right in between as the only place where they can survive. It's kind of cool. I like that idea.
But I also think so part of the reason why I dreamt up this species is because I think they would be a fantastic enemy for the Jedi and anybody who wields a lightsaber.
Yeah, that's true.
Because they could exist within the lightsaber. How do you?
Yeah.
Because then you'd be like, okay, we can't fight these things with our lightsabers. How do you fight it?
Yeah. Shout out to Dex and Download. How are you doing? Good, sir. When we get some more dark side stuff, we gotta have you come on. Actually, I haven't caught up with her in a while, but good friend of the channel, Sawyerism, is currently reading the Darth Bane trilogy. So once they finish, we should have a conversation on it. Maybe we can have you're aptly named. Maybe we can have that. Let's see here.
What if we had some sort of division in the ranks of midichlorians if a sect of them rebelled and became evil and started taking over life forms rather than just living inside them? Ooh. It's interesting. That would definitely forever change the way we understand midichlorians, right? Because they don't necessarily have like a will.
Yeah, but so you just made me think of the show Peacemaker, where there was the little aliens and they like fly in and then like basically pilot humans like mechs. I think that's cool. Time Trav sent me a text message.
Like a Time Lord, but they lose their memories each time of rebirth. So you have a Force sensitive join the Jedi, rise the ranks to master, then restart as a Padawan. That's pretty funny. I just overall love the Time Lord species in general. That would be really cool. Speaking of horror, I finally saw Nosferatu remake. That movie rules, especially if you love Bloodborne. I think they did a really good job with Nosferatu.
I guess this is somewhat unrelated, but in recent years, the X-Men comics has given a power to Moira McTaggart. The character Moira McTaggart, who helps mutants, but she's always just been a regular human. But what it turns out is that she has had a power all along, and it's like a broken power, sort of. And basically, it's that whenever she dies, the galactic timeline resets. And that's kind of how we've had so many different X-Men timelines. But here's the thing, is she always retains all the memories from her previous life. So imagine you live your entire life and then humanity destroys itself, catastrophically trying to kill mutants, and you die. Then the universe restarts and you have to go through adolescence again, all this stuff. And so really what has been doing this whole time has been trying to stop that from happening. And she just hasn't been able to. But she can't tell anyone that that's what's happening because she's tried that before and they get weirded out. It doesn't work. She can't tell people. So she has to lead people and connect this and that and move behind the scenes to make sure certain things happen and certain people meet. I think that's super fascinating. And so I just love the creative process of writing and making characters and stuff. It's just a lot of fun for me.
Which Nosferatu remake? The one with Bill Skarsgård and Nicholas Hoult? That's the one I'm talking about, at least. I didn't know there was 2 remakes.
There's the new one that just came out last year. That's
the one with Nicholas Hoult and Bill Skarsgård.
And then there's a really old one.
If you haven't, what's that one? Other one? It's not a remake of Nosferatu. Renfield. If you haven't watched Renfield yet with Nicolas Cage, definitely check it out. It's actually a really good movie, really enjoyable movie.
Yes. Also, this is another thing that's unrelated, but Pep, you really should get Dune Awakening. It's a fantastic video game. I love it, and I realized the reason why I love it. It's Jedi Academy. There's actually a lot of it that's a lot like Jedi Academy, where you're completing things, and it's just kind of dropping you into the world. You figure out how to do it, where to go to do it, and all this stuff. It's an interesting mixture of survival MMO, but also very single player oriented and just super fun.
I'm in the middle of catching up with Death Stranding and Forbidden West Horizon, because I think that's been out for a while, and I was waiting for Forbidden West to come out on PC.
Yeah, which is fair, but just so you know, we are on a private server and you can also play with us. We'll go to a deep desert. We'll get eaten by worms. Oh, also, it's so freaking cinematic and terrifying when you are like on your bike and you're trying to like go over sand dunes and the rumbling starts and like a big sandworm pops up and it's trying to eat you. It is horrifying.
It's single player or multiplayer?
Both. No, it's a multiplayer game. Like, and we're all like, if you do it free, then it's just a public server with all these random people in there. But most of the sections are PvE, with some little sections of PvP, and then they have the deep desert where it's just desert and all the best stuff gets farmed there. But a lot of it is just PvP, where just stuff happens. There's worms, you can mine spice and all that stuff. And so that's why I said we're on a private server, so we don't have to deal with those people within the main place. But once you go to the deep desert, that puts you into a public thing with all sorts of people. It's interesting, an interesting mixture of both.
I'll check it out. I'm right now. I'm so there's a couple of priorities in that I have. One is One Piece. Two is just finishing games that I haven't finished, like Avowed, Expedition 33, Death Stranding, because the new one came out and I thought I never really gave it a shot.
That game makes me too sad to play.
And then
now, one of my close friends was so excited for that game. It's all he talked about for months and months and months. I even at Comic-Con I got him the poster for it and I mailed it up to him. He was all excited. And right before it came out, he passed away. And so just the game itself just makes me sad.
Well, pour one out.
It's also very weird.
But I also like misunderstood what the game was, because everyone, meme culture, everyone just called it a walking simulator. But I tried it out and it's really, really interesting. But then I saw Forbidden West on too, like, oh, that's admittedly more interesting. So I started Forbidden West. So.
Forbidden West has been on PC for like a good year now, though.
Has it been?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm also on like a Resident Evil kick as well, revisiting. I finally played and beat Resident Evil 4 remake, because I had played the 2 remake, the 3 remake, and was waiting for the 4 remake, and I never played that on release. So it's just a whole. Just finding the time to play all of these games that I've had just on the back burner.
Okay.
I just kept failing miserably. Things kept falling out of my backpack. Yeah, no, that's one of the things that I kind of misunderstood about the game when I first started. I was stumbling too. Like it does gamify being a courier very accurately. So it isn't a walking simulator. It really is just like it's a traversal simulator.
Yeah, with weird baby mechanics. It's like I said, I started playing it, and it was just a lot.
Try the VR.
It was
game.
fun though, and it's a great game to like throw on a podcast and you just lose yourself in,
Yeah.
Like
I'm not a big fan of VR, Illy. I do like VR for like Beat Saber and like those interactive experiences, but like I tried Vader Immortal is a slog. Like I hate trying to shoot in VR. It's not as intuitive. Maybe it's just the game itself, but like I will forever be like a mouse and keyboard warrior when it comes to games. If things like make a huge 100% shift to VR, I don't know if I'll be a gamer anymore. But it seems like that'll do it for this episode of DYAD in the Force. Again, shout out to everybody in the TikTok side, YouTube, and Twitch side for hanging out with us and rocking with us for this episode and participating in the conversation. Had fun talking about movies and Ironheart and all of the misconceptions about Star Wars, because they're going to continue to be misconceptions. The biggest misconception, of course, is that gray Jedi can be a thing. What else? Just really quickly, there's the Jedi. The Jedi indoctrinate. The Jedi teach no emotions. There's a lot out there, to be honest. That is just a huge.
So the whole Jedi indoctrination thing, is it just what people think of different cultures? Like when is it just teaching people stuff? You know what I mean? Like isn't it just like raising kids?
Like we always say, it's a trade school. It's a vocation.
Yeah.
They teach agriculture. They teach diplomacy.
But I mean, kids in Japan are raised different than we are here. Is that indoctrination? They're indoctrinating them to Japanese way of thinking. I don't know. It's just a weird concept. Anyways, yeah. So we're keeping this episode a little short. I just want to make sure I'm available because my wife is still resting and stuff. So I need to be able to run out at a moment's notice. So thank you guys for hanging out with us.
Daxton says the light side is more powerful. Absolute lie. Sure. Thanks for the stream. Thank you guys for rocking with us. We'll see you guys next week at 5 p.m. Pacific for the next DYAD in the Force. And look out for episode 260 for our 5-year anniversary and the Hot Ones challenge. We may try to do that one in person, I think. Right?
Yeah, I mean, if we can... I don't know how to make it work, but we can.
I mean, it's not going to be as high production as this, but we'll just we'll take out our phone and go live, and because it's a lot easier to buy one kit than to have both of us buy the same kit and both of us spend $100, right? Just buy one kit and then toss the chicken wings in the sauce. All right, that'll do it. That's it. On to the next one.
For Light and for Life.
We are all... I mean, it's apt. We're all Star Wars fans.
Yep. And we all have misconceptions. It's moving beyond them. That's key.
The greatest teacher failure is... Bye, guys.
Peace out, Blaze.